Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to my talk. My name is Janani Kalyanam, and I'm going to be talking about leveraging social context for modeling topic evolution. This is joint work with my collaborators at Yahoo, Amin Mantrach, Diego Saez-Trumper, and Hossein Vahabi. I'm a PhD student at UC San Diego, and I work with Professor Gert Lanckriet. And this is joint work with Gert Lanckriet as well. Okay, so we live in a world of social media where each one of us is connected to everybody else all the time. And what this has resulted in is that this has given us the power to post and share information constantly, right? And this has resulted in an immense information overload, and we are inundated with information all the time. So this has made it really difficult for us to figure out what the most important sort of pattern in the data is, because there is so much data out there. About a decade ago, algorithms, like the previous author also spoke, algorithms like NMF and Bayesian-based LDA algorithms were invented to really work with these huge corpus to extract the interesting topics and the interesting patterns in the data. But the key assumption that a lot of these algorithms work on is that all the documents that fall under the same topic, they form a good cluster in terms of the words that encompass these documents, right? So for example, so these are very short documents and short examples that I'm giving, but hopefully it demonstrates the idea. So these are very short text snippets. And if you see that the topic bird flu, although the text snippets themselves are short, they have some pretty commonly co-occurring words in those topics, right? So our algorithms like NMF and LDA make this assumption that the documents actually form a good cluster in terms of their content. But that may not always be the case. So let's look at another example like celebrity gossip. These are still small examples, but there are no common words in any of the documents that I just presented. But all the same, they all still fall under the same topic of being celebrity gossip, right? So they still conform to the notion of being under a common topic. But these are more difficult topics, which may not exactly agree with the assumptions of the existing algorithms. So let's rethink about what social media has really done to us. So when we post something on social media, the post is not just a post. It comes with a lot of side information that goes with the post itself, right? Like, for example, the time of post, the user profiles, how important the user is in the network, what kind of people are actually interested in that post and posts like that. So all the side information, social media has put us in a situation where all the side information is available for us. So the idea in our work is to say, why not leverage the side information to see if we can somehow use that information to detect better topics, especially to detect topics that are the more difficult ones, right? So the sort of inspiration that we come from is that if celebrity gossip is a difficult topic to be detected, then, well, but it's still a topic, then there are perhaps a very dedicated set of users who really want to know what's going on in Lindsay Lohan's personal life, right? So there are perhaps a very dedicated set of users who want to know who keep talking about these topics. So if we are not able to learn from the content of the documents, so why not leverage the community information or the group of users who talk about these topics to detect those topics, okay? And another thing to note is that the communities and the topics also don't stay the same. They evolve over time, right? So celebrity gossip evolves over time depending on what celebrity we're talking about, and if there's a death or any important events. And also the communities also don't stay the same over time. So if we have a community of teenagers talking about celebrity gossip, they're going to grow older, and the communities keep evolving. So we need to sort of model all these things and take all these things into account in order to detect, the more difficult topics, right? So this is showing that the community evolves over time. So the existing algorithms generally focus on content. And what's needed is that in addition to textual content, use the context and the metadata that surrounds the text to discover the latent topics. So our goal is to see, does user interaction about a particular topic, and does modeling the temporal evolution of the topic and the community, do these two things help in detecting better topics? So that's the goal here. So how do we do this? We start with a non-negative matrix factorization-based objective, and then we will build on it. So in the next few slides, you will see me start with the traditional NMF objective. I'm going to add a term that models the user interactions, and I'm going to add a few more terms that models the evolution of the text and evolution of the communities over time. Okay. Okay. So this is all a transpose of what the previous author presented. So it's not to confuse you or anything. So we have two matrices. I'm going to assume that the documents sort of come to me in batches of time. So xt, where t represents time. It's a matrix of documents versus words. Ut is a matrix of the corresponding documents versus the users. So if the ith word is present in the jth document, that's indicated via xt. And if the ith user is interested in the jth document, then that's indicated via the UT matrix. Okay. So just a little bit of insight for what NMF really stands for. So if I have a document of, Hillary Clinton challenged Joe Biden, then it's decomposed into the topics, the corpus gets decomposed into topics like showbiz and politics. Then the W matrix sort of explains each document in terms of the underlying topics. So the W matrix tells me that the first document is 10% about showbiz and 90% about politics. So that's the first term in my NMF objective. The variables are W and H. So I have a similar term for the U matrix as well, where I decompose each document in terms of its underlying community, where GT sort of models the community of users, and the W matrix, again, explains each document, but now in terms of the latent communities present in the data. So I add the second term to my objective. So if you notice, so the key assumption that we make here is that in these two decompositions, the W matrix is common. So the W matrix is the matrix that explains what the document is really composed of. So the inspiration for this assumption comes from this observation. So the observation is that if there is a certain topic present in the data, the assumption is that there is also a corresponding community of users who are interested in that topic, right? So if I'm able to explain a document in terms of its latent topics, I should be equivalently be able to explain the same document in terms of the underlying communities, because I say that these communities correspond to, there's a correspondence between the communities and the topic. Okay. So I modeled the evolution of the documents over time using this equation. So the intuition for this equation comes from the fact that the two comes from saying that so the previous topics, how well are the previous topics? How well are they able to explain the current set of documents? The MT matrix sort of acts like the evolution matrix, and that models, how much are the documents in the previous and the current time steps related, how much they change and how much they stay the same. Okay, so I have a very similar term for explaining and modeling the change of the evolution of communities over time as well. So that's sort of my, the total view of my objective function. So if you look at the right-hand side of the objective function, that basically gets the data from the textual content of the documents, and the right-hand side of the objective function gets all the data from the community part, from the community aspect of the data. So I'm going to be calling them LT and LC. The variables here, so at each time step, I'm assuming that I know what the discovered topics in the previous time steps were. So the variables that I optimize with respect to are W, H, G, MT, and MC. We use multiplicative updates, just like the traditional NMF, and we obtain a local minimum. So, but I'm not going into details of that. So the loss function, if you think about it, what I add to the loss function now is that I add an importance parameter, because I need to know how much importance should I give to the topic part of the objective and the community part of the objective, depending on which topic that I'm actually dealing with. So I assume that the mu value is greater than 0. So a higher value of mu puts more importance on the topic part of the objective, and vice versa. Okay, so how do I evaluate my method? So the main message of this paper is to say that adding this, learning from the user activity and the community information helps, and modeling the evolution of topics and the evolution of the community over time also helps. So how would I evaluate that? So what I do is I split my data into 3 categories of topics. So the first set of topics are content-stable topics, or the good topics like bird flu, where I think that the topic, the text in the documents itself tell me a lot about which topic it belongs to. The second set are the more difficult topics like celebrity gossip, where I think that the text is actually very difficult to learn from, and I would need more of the community information. And a third set called mixed stable topics, which is a mixture of the above two. And now I want to know if I apply my model in these sets of topics, how do they perform, and what the value of mu is, in sense of, do I have to give more importance to the topic part of the objective or the community part of the objective, and so on. Okay, so in each category, evaluate how much does adding the contextual information and the temporal modeling really help. Okay, so the data that we use is news articles from CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, and 80 major news sources. And the user activity information, so we also have a corresponding set of tweets which have links to these news articles from the time of their publication. And what we do is, from these tweets, we extract the usernames from which these tweets were posted, and we also extract the hashtags embedded in these tweets. So the hashtags kind of act like the ground truth topic to which these news articles belong to. And from the usernames, we model the U matrix and learn the community information. Okay, so our model is learning topic evolution from content and social media activity. So the natural baselines that I would compare this to is models that use models that use both topic and community but lack a temporal aspect, or models that have temporal aspect but lack the community aspect, and so on. So we compare it to a few of the baselines. Each baseline lacks one aspect or the other. But the most interesting baseline that I will be presenting in the next few slides are the ones that lack the community aspect, and see how it does comparing to that, and ones that lack a temporal aspect, and see how our model does when we compare it to that. Okay, so if you see, our model is mentioned in the top. The first baseline is something that does not use the context information or the community information. And the second baseline does not use the temporal modeling information. So the K value, that tells me how many topics that I'm really trying to detect. And the mu value in the first table, that tells me how much importance I'm giving to the topic part of the objective and the community part of the objective. So this slide is for community stable topics, or topics like celebrity gossip, where I think that the text in the document is not really telling me much, and hopefully using the community information helps. So if you see that for k equals 5, turns out that the mu value is really low, and that tells me that I'm not really using the textual part of the documents at all. It turns out that if I place all the importance on the community part of the objective, that's the thing that actually gets me the best performance. And as the number of topics increases, the takeaway here is that I still need a lot of community information in addition to the textual content of these documents in order to achieve best performance. And you can sort of think of the first baseline as the baseline where I would just put all the importance on the topic part of the objective. Okay. So this is results for content-stable topics. So I also wanted to know how well does our algorithm do for those topics for which I think the content is really good, right? Like topics like bird flu. So it turns out that when k equals 5 and 10, putting all the importance on the topic, that's what works best, right? But as I sort of increase the number of topics, turns out that I need to sort of move away from putting all the importance on the topic, and I need to start adding information about the user activity, right? So it turns out that user activity does help for the content-stable topics as well. And for mixed stable topics, like we would all imagine, it turns out that the best value of mu is between 0.25 and 0.75, kind of telling me that, depending on the topic, the mu value is somewhere in the middle. So you need equal amount of both the topic and the community information to detect good topics. So the conclusion is that using site information helps. It especially helps with noisy topics. I mean, topics like celebrity gossip, where the text is just, it has a wide variety to it. So thank you.
So I have time for one question, one or two questions. Yeah.
Yeah, for right now we right.
Can you repeat the question?
Right. So the question is about finding the optimal value of mu. So right now the way that we do it is just by trying out different values of mu, because I think that was also the sort of the point of the study. We wanted to know when does topic help and when does community information actually help, and for what kind of topics. So. Actually, we just did one mu value for all time. Yeah.
But that would change over time, would you say?
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, one more question, yeah.
Can this be extended to work with hierarchical social groups?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's something that we actually thought about, but it possibly could be. I can't say. But that's something that we talked about. Like, as in, we first said that celebrity gossip just turns out to be a much broader variety of, it could be a topic at, if we were to sort of put it in a hierarchy, it would be, up in the hierarchy. So.
Okay, let's thank the speaker again.